Hi, and welcome to another episode of Platitudes, Find Your Roar. I'm so excited to be here tonight with my good friend, Delegate Jennifer Boysko. We're sitting at my kitchen counter because we're awaiting the arrival of the governor here for her bid to run for Jennifer Wexton's seat in the state senate. I have known Jennifer Boysko since before she ran for office and was just a fabulous grassroots advocate. And I'm so proud to be sitting here with her today. You've been a grassroots advocate. You've worked on Capitol Hill. You understand the legislative process. You've passed a lot of legislation. You know, I talk to people about finding their roar as women. You found your roar a while ago, but how do you think? What helped you find your roar, and why do you think this will help you expand your roar?
Absolutely. Well, thanks for asking me that. Excuse my voice. I've really been working hard, and
she's been roaring awful loud.
I've been roaring too loudly, I guess, but I'm not stopping because we don't have time. I think I originally found my voice as really a small child.
How was that?
When I was in the 6th grade back in the 70s, only boys were allowed to be crossing guards, and my older brothers had both been crossing guards. And when I got to the 6th grade, I said, well, what about us?
Right.
And so I gathered up my girlfriends. We went down to the principal's office, made our case, and he said, okay, that makes sense. So he put me in as the first alternate, and then they made the program co-ed after that. That was in the late, I think it was 1978. And I have been standing up and speaking out for other people and to advocate for folks in my community ever since.
So you've been an activist really all your life?
My whole life.
Your whole life. I know a story about you that you told me a long time ago about something you did to help an older couple, and that if you hadn't had done it, that one of them would have passed.
Yeah.
I'd like you to tell the story because I remember you telling me this a while ago and why it was so important. These things that maybe some people don't think are always the most important job of an elected official, which is to listen and to help people individually as well as the whole. Will you tell us that story?
Certainly. So I spent years working for John Faust, the Drainsville supervisor, and focusing on utilities was part of my portfolio. There was a lovely couple who lived off of Route 7 who did not have their copper wire for their telephone service was degraded and really, almost rotten, and they weren't able to get phone service, just landline service into their home. And they were in their 80s. They were not people who wanted to have cell phones. They didn't want to have to go to the FiOS service either. And so I worked with Verizon over a series of several weeks to say, you have to go back and install copper wire to their house. They were very resistant, and I continued to be persistent, yet she persisted. Finally, they agreed that they would do that for them because the couple was so obstinate about having any other option.
It's a health issue.
It was a health issue for them. What the amazing thing was very soon after they relayed the groundwork for them, the husband had a massive heart attack. Had his wife not had access to her landline, he would have died that afternoon. But they were able to call 911, get the medics in to save his life, and they called me once he was recovered. They called me to thank me because they felt like I had been a big part in preserving his livelihood.
When people don't think that electing an official or going to vote is important or their voice really matters, that really brings it home.
It really does.
And telling stories about people, how you individually do care about people, really helps.
I can tell you another story, Susan. There was an immigrant woman who worked at one of the hotels as a cleaning lady. Her family, she had immigrated from El Salvador, here as a citizen. Almost all the rest of her family is here, but she had one child, one adult daughter who lives with some serious disabilities. The daughter's caretaker let her know that she was no longer able to take care of her, and she was trying to get her daughter brought over to the United States so that she could take care of her because she was going to be left alone. It took weeks and weeks of us pushing with immigration, working hand in hand with Senator Tim Kaine's office. Finally, we were able to help expedite the visa to get her proper paperwork to come over here. And again, the family was reunited. these kinds of constituent services are the bread and butter of what we elected officials can do for our community, and it really can make a life and death difference. That woman would have been destitute in El Salvador, which we know is a dangerous place to live right now.
Absolutely.
And she had no one to take care of her.
Absolutely. What is your what was your hardest job when you were first elected to being a delegate?
Well, I think the biggest shocker was, we all know that there's fighting that goes on in the General Assembly. You read the paper, you know that the Republicans are on this side, the Democrats are on this side, and there's a lot of headbutting. To actually be in the room when you've had conversations with your colleagues on both sides of the aisle, and you know that they personally agree with a policy initiative, but then to watch them voting against it because they are being required to by their party, that I think for me was the toughest thing. Just to realize, wow, this is amazing, and to hear some of the rhetoric that gets thrown in person is mind blowing, honestly.
How do you think it will be different should you get reelected or get elected to Jennifer Weston's Senate?
Sure. Well, the Senate is much smaller. There's only 40 members as opposed to 140, so everybody has to get along a little bit better. I was really fortunate last year. I got some legislation through, really at the credit of Republicans in the Senate.
And what was that?
An animal welfare bill that will protect animals, prohibiting animal testing on consumer products like household cleaners and cosmetics. It was actually a member of the Republican Senate who really shepherded the bill through and helped me get it passed. So I feel like there's an opportunity for more collaboration, and obviously you would have a bigger opportunity to help the community at large, because a House of Delegates district, you represent about 80,000 people. In the Senate, you represent more like 250,000 people.
Tell me how you make decisions. There's a lot of contentious issues that have been coming forward, in our General Assembly, in the Congress. And what is it when you're faced with a big issue? How do you go about making your decisions?
Well, first I read the legislation. I think it's really
That's important.
And not everybody does. I found out some people were kind of shocked, but I actually read the legislation, and then I make sure that I spend time talking to people on both sides of the issue. I also spend time, if I'm not on the committee that considers the legislation first, I consult with members who do sit on those committees who look at it at a deeper level. But I think it's really important to understand the positives and the negatives for the people that I really trust and believe, but also try to understand the positives and the negatives to other folks, and to understand how it would affect my personal community. So, for instance, I sit on the Broadband Advisory Council, and one of our big mission is to get access to internet for everybody in Virginia.
Right.
Big
issue.
There was a small cell tower issue that came up last year. Typically, because I'm on the Broadband Advisory Council, that would be something that I would immediately support, because I can see the benefit to the greater good.
Right.
I had a real problem because my localities, Fairfax County, the town of Herndon, Loudoun County, were against it. They felt like it was taking their ability to make decisions for themselves out of their hands. And so I listened to that very carefully. I made sure that the folks who were supporting the bill understood where I was coming from. I let them know right up front what the reason was, and said, is there a way that we could take our district planning district out of that bill so that they're not affected, because our local lawmakers in Loudoun County and Fairfax County really have a good process for this, and they don't want to have their ability to make decisions taken away. So I try to look at it from a variety of angles, and then I try to make the best decision for our community and then for the greater good of Virginia. But it's not easy.
It's not easy, but that's what we want all our politicians to do, I think.
It is.
Now, we have someone outside. Let's talk about this. Protesting the pipeline. You've come out against the pipeline.
Yeah, I have.
I'm not sure why they're here, but they're here. You talk about how it affects a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I know you're a big advocate for the environment. Let's talk about the environment a little bit. What do you think is our most pressing problem? I know you're against the pipeline, and I'd like to talk a little bit more about that, but you're against it, so you're against it. What do you think is our most pressing problem here in Virginia when it comes to the environment?
I think really climate change that is staring us at the face. I mean, we're seeing abnormal amounts of flooding along coastal Virginia, which is a real threat to our naval bases and all the, very sensitive infrastructure that we have out that way. I think that the entire issue around climate change is really affecting us all. And we need to be doing everything that we can to be focusing on renewable energy so that we're getting away from it. In fact, I brought together a group of industry folks from all the sectors, from wind and solar, battery storage, and I brought Dominion because I wanted them to be able to hear what everyone was saying and have them answer to the people in the audience about what they were concerned about.
Good idea.
So that we had an honest dialogue. We haven't. Here's my concern, Susan, is that when we have one group of people who are saying, we are not having this, and then they refuse to speak to the people who have real control and power over some of the decision making, we're not going to get anywhere. We've got to come together and have decision making and conversations and figure out where we can find common ground so that we can move forward in the right way.
I think that's why Virginia just elected 3 new Democratic women as our our representatives, because I think people want to communicate. They want to talk about it. They have very strong opinions one way or the other.
Yes.
But if you don't talk to someone else, you just don't understand where they're coming from. But I know you have 2 daughters, right?
I do.
What was the most important thing you taught them?
I taught them to stand up for themselves, to be good listeners, to be kind, to pursue education and make sure that they learned how to take care of themselves, and to think for themselves and to trust themselves. I think too often we tell children, boys and girls alike, not to listen to what they're feeling. And I think they know more than they think they do. My girls now are 21 and just turned 24. And I'm just so proud of them because they have become strong, resilient women who think for themselves and, are forging their own path.
Did your mother instill that in you, or was it just something that happened because you found that you were feeling oppressed somehow?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, both of my parents instilled it in different ways. So my mom dropped out of college when she was 18. She thought she had met the man of her dreams and never had a job, didn't graduate from college, found herself divorced from my dad. It wasn't a healthy marriage, and we were destitute for a while. There were me and my 2 brothers. After she got her first job, they made no money, and her partner gave her 2 sleeping bags and an electric knife without a cord for her salary. She then got a minimum wage job where she had no sick leave and had to really struggle whether or not to take care of me or leave me at home when I was sick. And this is not the first time I've gotten under the weather, believe it or not. But her father was able to take her back to school and pay for that. Her mission after that was, you are going to get an education, you're going to stand on your own 2 feet, and you're going to learn how to advocate for yourself. So that was my mom. My dad, on the other hand, is an Episcopal priest, and he is of the social justice theology where you stand up for those who don't have a voice and you go to the mat for them. And so I had a great experience watching him do that as a minister and a social justice advocate in his own right, and he continues to stand up and give them hell. I guess
you can say that.
Yeah. But the 2 of them really taught me to be someone who thinks for myself, but also to make sure the actions that I take make the world a better place. And from the time I was in the 6th grade, like I was telling you earlier, I've had that in my mind. In college, I became very close with my college chaplain. He took us to Washington, D.C. from Hollins College, Roanoke, Virginia, to advocate for Central American current issues back in the 1980s, where we were talking about human rights violations and the struggles that the people on the ground in Central America were dealing with.
Well, we're about to have the governor come in, as we talked about.
Yes, we are.
So you have the support of the governor.
Yes.
Governor Northam.
Yeah.
You have the support of Jennifer Wexton.
Former 33rd
District.
Yes.
You have the support of our mayor,
Yes.
Kelly Burke.
Kelly Burke.
You have the support of just about every other official.
Yeah.
That is in this area. Tell us, why do you think they support you? And why should everybody else out there? The election's coming up. This Saturday is the primary.
This Saturday is the primary. I believe they are standing up with me because they have known me and worked with me and seen the strength that I bring to everything that I do. I'm tireless. I'm tenacious. I really believe in the things that we hold dear as values, making our community a better place for everyone, whether it's a social justice issue where it's standing up for, Medicaid expansion, which I got to be a champion for, whether it's transportation infrastructure improvements, or whether it's women's health issues or gun violence prevention. I've been on the front lines for years on all these issues. I have a good solid record to show that I put my money where my mouth, and I'm not afraid to sometimes be bold and put people out of their comfort zone. And I will continue to be doing that in the Senate. And not only that, but also I've spent years trying to help other people be successful as they move up the pipeline. And just last year in 2017, we were able to bring in 15 new members of the House of Delegates. I was the finance chair for the House Democratic Caucus. I raised close to $500,000. Even though I had my own race, I made sure that I had everybody else's back. And
as women, we tend to do that. We do that a lot. We care for other people, and you help bring everybody up.
Yes.
So I hear the doorbell starting to ring.
Okay.
So we're going to have to cut this short.
Thank you for having
other
me.
people are here. But the election is coming up Saturday. Any final words that you want to say?
Sure. This is going to be a very small turnout. It would mean an enormous deal for me if you would come out and vote for me. I have been a proven progressive. I have been effective, and I build bridges wherever I go. I hope to have you on my team. Thank you so much.
I introduced Jennifer to a friend of mine, and she said that was one of the most approachable, real people, politicians I've ever met, and I think that's true for Jennifer.
Thank you.
So at the very end, what I do is I do this funny thing where I roar.
Oh, okay.
And Ann Holton does a really good roar.
Does
so
she?
I don't know if you want to be in competition or not
Oh,
with
my
Ann.
goodness.
But are you ready to roar?
Sure.
So I'm Susan Platt. Thank you very much for joining me. This is Find Your Roar with Jennifer Boysko, soon to be, I hope, my state senator. Here we go.